A little bit of a rocky start, unlike the Winnipeg Jets tonight. Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show. After, I'm trying to think of one. I think that's the Winnipeg Jets' best game of the year. Thought that they were great. We'll dig into this whole thing. Obviously, the return of Connor Hellebuyck, which I can tell you the interesting behind-the-scenes story of that. Why don't you hop in to my Toyota here as we head on the Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent opening drive to start the show here. A lot of times what will happen is we'll, on the broadcast, be privy to inside information, you could kind of say, like things that aren't released to the general media so that we can prepare properly for the broadcast. That didn't happen on this day. I had multiple openings ready to go and queued up for the start of that game, where you saw me taking from Carolyn Cameron, who was in New York, and then throwing back to Ron McLean back on the desk. The reason for that is because we truly did not know. We expected it, but we truly did not know that Connor Hellebuyck was going to start that game until basically the moment. I mean, we had a really good idea when we saw him sitting out on the bench doing the darting eyes trick that he does to get started. And then when we saw him coming out in the Nino Niederreiter jersey for the 1,000th game for Nino Niederreiter, everyone dressing up in that jersey, then we knew that it was a go. But hard to believe given him coming back after 3 weeks. I know we talked with the general media about it. I had him before the general media, right after the game, on the bench. And the the intensity that he spoke about getting back in the time that he got back, a week to 3 weeks early from the procedure that he had, you could tell this was one of these things. If you saw my opening, I described him as superhuman recovery in this situation. You could see I've been injured before. I've seen injured people before. I don't think I've ever seen people talk about coming back from an injury with the passion that Connor Hellebuyck was talking about. So if you're looking for, powers of positive thinking and stuff like that, maybe check out that interview that I did at the end of the game there with Connor Hellebuyck, because that was something else. And clearly Connor Hellebuyck, a lot of people out there have been saying for a long time, the Winnipeg Jets, just not the same team without Connor Hellebuyck. The Winnipeg Jets, they need that confidence. And you know what? I had poured water on that idea for much of it. And one of the reasons was, I'd said this before, the Winnipeg Jets found a way to win a first round series last season when Connor Hellebuyck was, working almost against them in the way that he was playing. And they still found a way. They didn't let their confidence sap them to that degree. It's hard to see anything other than it being that situation with Connor Hellebuyck, because the Winnipeg Jets went from being a wounded, vulnerable team to playing as solid as I've seen them play. 2 games ago, I talked about their game against the Dallas Stars. I thought it was one of their best games of the year. I thought they carried the play extremely well. One of the things that held them back in that game, though, is the Jets defensively have been a mistake-prone group so far this season. That's not what we saw tonight. You saw, for the most part, the Winnipeg Jets who took care of their business. You saw the Winnipeg Jets against the Washington Capitals team that came in, fairly hot into this game, points in 9 straight games. Probably not the best effort you've seen from the Washington Capitals this year, but credit where it's due. A lot of that would have to do with the way the Winnipeg Jets shut them down tonight, and them maybe not responding well to that. But the other part about this is what I saw from the Winnipeg Jets was a team that, like last year, if you came into their building or if you came into a game against the Winnipeg Jets and you didn't have their A game, they weren't going to play down to their level. They'd be like, yeah, you don't want to play your A game? Too bad. We're going to run all over you. And that's what they did to the Washington Capitals tonight. It was not even close. One of the things that I thought was an extremely good sign was for them to start the game and only allow 3 shots in the first period. Check those stats out. None of them were high danger scoring chances. If you want to slightly ease your goaltender into a game, like, dipping slowly into a warm bath. That's exactly what the Winnipeg Jets did. The degree of difficulty started to go up for Hellebuyck in the second period, but when you're given 20 minutes to get yourself into the game, a guy like Connor Hellebuyck is going to get his game underneath him. Thought he played extremely well. This is back to a little bit of the Connor Hellebuyck didn't need to be great tonight, but he was great on this night. Was he challenged overly? I don't think he was overly challenged, but he was there to meet the challenge. One of the things that I talked about with Eric Comrie in our last show was, regardless of what we were seeing, of the high danger chances that Connor Hellebuyck was having to face, and if you're being truly honest with yourself and you watch the last game against the Boston Bruins versus this game against the Washington Capitals, there's no way that Connor Hellebuyck was facing the kind of opportunities that the Winnipeg Jets were allowing against Eric Comrie. But I'll say this, I said it last show, Eric Comrie, after a while, you just have to say the results aren't coming and that he's not the answer. There's no doubt about it on this night. Connor Hellebuyck was the answer that the Winnipeg Jets were looking for. That's my take on the opening drive. So let's pull up and hop out of the vehicle and take a circle around it, see what's going on with it there before we bring in Ken. And let's also get you aware of their most recent offer, because this December, it's time to Toyota at Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent. Lease the 2025 Tacoma 4x4 SR5 truck from just $116 weekly for 64 months at 6.59% with $7,699 down and a $1,500 accessory credit. But hurry, the offer ends December 31st. Visit Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent for a test drive today. And I know a lot of you folks out there do a great job of supporting our sponsors. I had a buddy from Pine Falls, one of the former tough guys in the Junior A, get a hold of me talking about watching the K&R show last game, and he casually mentioned that he's already gone out and bought 2 Tacomas because of our advertising doing so well. So if you've only gone out and bought one out there, folks, I'd say you've got some work to do to catch my boy Chris Fontaine out in Pine Falls. Speaking of my boy, I got another couple of boys ready to jump into the show and tag team in and have a little bit of a conversation about what you saw here from the Winnipeg Jets today. So let's start with one. Let's start with one who's the man with the best music in the business. Time to bring in Kenny, folks. Kenny, I'm just going to get this out of the way early. My software has given me issues here today, so I apologize to the folks out there if things don't go exactly as planned, but I think we got things working out here. One thing that never lets me down is Ken Wiebe and his analysis of a game, and finally a game that looks as good as this guy right there looks, all dressed up in his Vittorio Rossi outfit, myself as well. I found this one, Ken. I haven't seen it in the back of the closet for a little while.
Same.
Like, you know what? Well, there you go. And it's one of these things where we have such a depth of good-looking suits from the boys of Vittorio Rossi that sometimes you pull stuff out that are absolute gems. If you want to go to a place where they can just give you one win after another, you got to head on down to Vittorio Rossi. Walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, which I will do on Monday as I'm going in to see him, as you are, Ken, and they will do you up right. I talked about a win after a win after a win, Ken. Well, we're not quite there yet with the Winnipeg Jets, but the kind of performance you saw tonight that resulted in a win, so the kind of template that's going to result in a win after a win after a win.
Yeah, no doubt. I would imagine most people's Jets chat rooms, voice or text chains are looking a little different this evening compared to some of the other games that we've seen over the stretch of time where the Jets went 2-8-1 after Connor Hellebuyck went on to IR here. But yeah, I mean, impressive template, as you mentioned. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck, Sean, you're in the building. I mean, when the camera panned to him leading the Jets out onto the ice, there just seemed to be a little sense of calm surrounding their team. And we know it's not because the Jets don't have confidence in Eric Comrie. They do. They love Eric Comrie. They love the work that he puts in. But Eric Comrie was taxed. There's no other way to put it. 12 starts in 13 games for someone who has 20 appearances as his career high. That's asking a lot of anyone. But there's no doubt that the Jets clamped down in front of Connor Hellebuyck. The high danger chances were very lopsided in this game, Sean. And as you touched on, 3 shots on net in the first period. 2 of them came on the power play. One of them was a float wrister from the blue line, and another was a one-timer from Ovechkin that he didn't hammer. It was almost like a changeup. So 1 shot at 5-on-5 in the first period was a pretty good template. Jets were very good. They got their secondary scoring. They got their top line reunited and cruising out there, and their power play clicked. And about the only box they didn't check, and they checked it for most of the night, but the penalty kill has now given up goals in 8 consecutive games. Now, today's comes on a 2-man advantage, but on a game where they were very solid overall, especially in the first period to set the tone. So, this is how the Jets looked like a lot at various points last year. Good environment in front of an elite goalie. Generally, your team is going to play well in those circumstances. But as Scott Arniel was harping on after in his post game, as he was earlier this week, won't mean much if you don't follow it up. So, but I would say the Jets' chances of following it up are going to be a little bit higher based on the confidence they played with in this game this evening.
You know what? I'm going to just jump out of the gate here right off the bat, and I'm going to hand out a couple of Flame and Comfort Award winners here. This one from Scatback. I think tonight's game didn't show that Hellebuyck was a worthy Hart winner last season, but the last 3 weeks sure as hell did. That's good analysis right there. I like what I'm seeing there from that analysis. That's good stuff. And there was another one here. Well, no. Yes, this one here from Glenn Fricker, who kind of sums things up. And we're going to talk with our boy, Sammy the Scarf, who's just waiting in the green room to pop in here. But before we do, just Glenn Fricker says, might be one of the best defensively played games this year. Washington looked disinterested. I touched a little bit on it. I think Sammy's going to be able to touch on that a little bit more. But regardless, those are 2 very worthy candidates for the Flame and Comfort hot take, brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort has moved to 1465 St. James Street. And when you get down there, you're going to see it is one of the most impressive showrooms you will find in Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside, folks. You can visit Flame and Comfort. They will take care of it for you. So let's bring them in right now. I've already teased it. Got to bring in the main man, who it's good to see back on the Jets broadcast. And this is an interesting one, Sammy, because I had to give an explanation to you at the beginning of that. Now, I didn't have to. I gave you my explanation of what I thought we were seeing the Winnipeg Jets going through. A lot of what you saw live from the Winnipeg Jets is what you saw when you covered this team last year. This tonight is almost like a continuation of what's happening here. But what did you square away in what you saw from the Winnipeg Jets compared to the results that you've been seeing and what you have been able to see of this team throughout the year?
So four things that I saw. First of all, the team energized for Hellebuyck, the team energized for Nino and Niederreiter. I saw a Washington team that didn't play its game, but I also saw a Winnipeg team that really played its game. So those 4 things combined, and then you can kind of break it down from there. Like sitting between the benches, Washington had very, very little energy. I mean, 3 shots on goal in the first period with about 7 minutes left. They had 4 shots on goal in the third, and just not a lot of life, not a lot of juice on the bench. And then when it came to the other side, to looking at Winnipeg, Washington tried to stretch the zone early a couple of times. That didn't work. And when that didn't work, trying to get through neutral ice with any sort of speed was next to impossible. I mean, I thought the gap control was really good. I thought the forwards coming back to help out was really good. There were a lot of times where Washington would regroup, get it into neutral ice, and then just stop because there would be no other options. And so I thought that had a lot to do with how Winnipeg was playing. But when all four of those things came together, you kind of get to the end result here is a sizable win for Winnipeg.
Great looking scarf to start with, Sammy. I mean, we always try to take people behind the curtain a little bit. I know you had a long, extended chat with Adam Lowry today, and no coincidence, Adam Lowry played his best game of the season here. What can you share about some of that conversation you had with him?
Well, it was really enlightening to me because he's just so thoughtful and so honest, and like when he speaks, he's speaking like a captain. Because he has a real good pulse of what the team is doing and has done and where they need to go. And so, one thing that he was really adamant about was cleaning up the PK. They'd given up a goal in 7 straight games. They'd given up multiple goals in each of the last 2 games. And that was an area that was, other than the 5-on-3 was quite good tonight. And a 5-on-3 is a 5-on-3. So, good on Washington for breaking the shutout in that scenario. But overall, he talked about, like, here's some of the things that we do well. And then, making sure that they were able to find that third guy on their line. And I think that worked out pretty well tonight with Iafallo being there with Barron and Iafallo. And I thought that line was excellent all night long. So there was just a lot of enlightening moments. But when he spoke like a guy who had confidence in his group, but that his group hadn't gotten to play the way that everyone expected. And I guess another part of the conversation was when you're not getting the results and you're trying to play a certain way, then you overcompensate to try and make up for not getting the results. And when that happens, then you're in this spin cycle of unsuccessful errors. Errors all over the place. So, I think a lot of that was cleaned up in one game, and now it's just a matter to see if this thing is sustainable.
When you talk about cleaning things up in one game, what you needed out of this game was you needed a return of the team that was getting a little bit of its grind on. We see that happen. We see a return of a team that's not making the mistakes that it was making in the past. We see the return of a goaltender that's capable of kind of creating the momentum that you saw Connor Hellebuyck create for his team here tonight. And maybe most importantly is that one would be the most important, but a big one here was some depth scoring at a key point in the game, and not just one, but another one where it felt like what you used to get with the Winnipeg Jets last year, in that if you didn't show up and play your A game like Washington did not tonight, the Winnipeg Jets would be the kind of team who would come out and they would pour it on you. And it would be the top line and another line and another line, and they'd bury you a little bit. So you're on the topic of Adam Lowry. I'm going to start with Ken. Ken, what did you see out of the third line tonight? Sorry, not the third line, the second line with, Adam Lowry's line, that they were able to impact the game the way they did on the scoreboard and kind of do so in an extremely, manner of a Lowry type line?
Again, Sean, we've talked about this for a couple of weeks now, and Morgan Barron. We've been wondering if Morgan Barron might be reunited with Adam Lowry at some point, and I thought that those two guys worked exceptionally well, not just on the goal, but when you have Barron's level of speed and power forward type of game, I thought, tip of the spear. We've talked about the last little while. Koepke did Cole Koepke did a great job in that role the other night, but Morgan Barron did a great job again today. And it's funny. I mean, Alex Iafallo had been with Adam Lowry, and it hadn't really looked particularly good at various points when Niederreiter was with them. But today, Iafallo was in sync. And I think, Sean, the biggest thing for me, and you saw this as well, Adam Lowry skated the best that he's skated since he's been back from the hip surgery. That, to me, his ability to hunt pucks, and that just sets them up big time. And that line, when Adam can get in on the forecheck and lay a big hit and get his feet moving, I just thought that it really sort of all three of those guys were at the top of their game, and the cohesion with the unit is something we haven't seen not nearly enough this year so far from the third. Essentially they were the best third line, one of them in the NHL last year. That hadn't been the case for 30 games. Today they looked like one of the best third lines, and like you said, they were technically playing in the second line in terms of usage today.
Yeah, Sammy, you don't have as much of a cross section of seeing that the depth scoring struggle the way that we've had game after game after game here. But maybe just through a set of fresh eyes, what you think made that line effective on this night?
Well, I mean, like the thing about Barron is that he brings that speed element to the game, and so there's consternation as to whether or not you want to play him on the wing or you want to play him, down the middle. So I think he's an effective guy in both areas, and that versatility is very handy for sure. But I think his speed was driving the line, and I think Adam was moving really well, brought some physicality, block shots. Where that line is going to be effective is in the opposition's end, and they were down there giving the ground and pound, and that's where they were effective, where they weren't having to defend. They were on the attack more than they had to defend, and I think that's probably if you were just break it down to the most basic thing, I would say that's the case. They were able to really ground the opponent down, and then not have to defend nearly as much as maybe they have earlier in the year.
I wonder how much the mindset changes when you've got Morgan Barron on that line and bringing that speed. Because I always used to think last year what made that line, Adam Lowry's line, whether you want to call it the second line or the third line, and clearly this is a very different iteration of that line. But one of the things I always thought made it such a good line is that when Adam Lowry and guys like that and big guy like Morgan Barron are playing on their toes, it just leads to so much more of like large bodies leaning on guys and just being that kind of thing that we saw at the beginning of the year, Ken, when Morgan Barron had a real good start to the year, and his mindset of just like, I'm taking the puck to the net and you're not going to stop me, right? And what that leads to on this night is the first goal, which is just driving hard to the net, throw it to an area, see if you can't get like it. The thing that makes that save tough for Logan Thompson on that first goal that line scores is when you've got a guy barreling down the ice straight at you, and he's a big body, like you can't help but like be distracted by what's happening there. And so when that pass comes across, it's hard to really focus on where the puck is going and where it makes contact with the stick, because your peripheral vision shows you there's a big body moving towards you, and then all of a sudden you get distracted by that. You aren't quite loaded right into where that puck hits the stick, and boom, it's shipped by you. And then the other one, you could call it, this is a great example. I used to talk last year over and over about the hockey gods bounces that the Winnipeg Jets got, and they seemed to get them all. There haven't been a lot of hockey gods bounces this year going the Winnipeg Jets way. One of the reasons that would happen is because hockey god bounces, and I've talked about it before, are often just earned, right? You go and you create chaos at the front of the net, and what this leads to on this night is Alex Iafallo ends up getting a goal that is redirected into the back of the net by Justin Sordeff, who's been a great player for the Washington Capitals, has really helped them survive the loss of Pierre-Luc Dubois. Hey, we had a whole bunch of Washington Capitals stories queued up to talk about tonight. They didn't do anything worth us, going anywhere with the stories, but he was one of them. But that happens because there's so much confusion at the front of the net that Justin Sordeff is just trying to break up a play that he thinks may be there, and he's not sure. You don't want to let the puck go through and land on someone's stick and be in the back of the net. You want to affect it however you can. But it's like we used to talk about on this program last year. So many of the bounces that the Jets got were because you get your defenders in a defensive position, not ready to pounce. And when you're in a defensive position, your skates are more likely to line up and redirect a puck into the back of the net. If you're in a defensive position trying to keep, Morgan Barron from the front of the net, the puck's more likely to bounce off your back and into the back of the net. That line, I thought, got to the stage where they were just pushing so hard that it turns eyes inward, right? And your focus is not able to be as much where you want it to be, because when big men are moving like that at that speed, there's just too much going on for the brain to process. And I think that's why that, to me, is the theme of the two goals they get tonight, even if one would say that one of those goals had a lucky bounce element to it, Ken.
Sure. And I mean, as you mentioned, Barron, people don't understand how tough that play is. Offside redirection. I mean, that's a great play by Barron. But again, like you mentioned, because he's driving the back post, that's what causes the disruption. And as you mentioned, I mean, it's unlucky for Sordif, but if it doesn't hit Sordif, it's probably tipped in by Barron anyway. So there is an element of luck to Iafallo's goals, sure. But again, it's also a result of a net drive. And again, it probably would have been a redirection if it didn't hit the opposition player. So yeah, I thought that line was excellent in terms of what they generated and what they gave up, because they gave up almost nothing. Yeah. So, and Sammy, you nailed it. I mean, the third line hasn't been as effective for the Jets this year, because last year they spent almost 60+% of the game in the O zone. This year they've been spending that time in the D zone. So guess what? It's going to be tougher, A, to produce offense, and B, to defend, right? I mean, it's just simple. I mean, when you're spending more time down there, it's going to be tougher. But yeah, I mean, I thought that Barron was excellent. And for both those guys, Sammy, they've been struggling. Barron had gone 20 without a goal, 20 games without a goal, and he had 1 assist in that stretch. Iafallo, 13 games without a goal. So when those guys now go in back-to-back games and get that line going, very impressive. And Sam, another guy you've watched a lot over the course of his career, I mean, Logan Stanley's up to 5 goals. We always talk about the physical element and the toughness and all that, but you saw him when he was playing junior. He had an offensive tilt to his game as well. How has he been able to take that next step? I mean, this is a guy that had 5 one-goal seasons, and now he's got 5 in 31 games here. And first of all, I don't know why he was down there to begin with.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Getting the puck off the end boards, but he's not afraid to join. And I mean, just what have you seen in terms of his development, at least on the offensive side?
Well, for me, it's just confidence. So I think he's basically spent each of the last 5 years wondering if he's going to be in the lineup. And if he's in the lineup, how much is he going to play? And so I think putting him with Shen has been unbelievable. It's just given him the confidence to go and do whatever he wants. And I think previous to that pairing working together, you have a guy in Logan Stanley who has had some success, as you mentioned earlier in his career on the offensive side, but not sure, am I join? Am I to lead? Am I to stay back and defend? And so he's caught in between all of these different things that he thinks he should do without maybe any clear definition in his own mind. But knowing that Shen's there, because I think there was a lot of times when Stan was paired up with someone where he would have to be the more complimentary guy, if you will. And I think with Shen, he's given him some license to go and use that long stride and that long reach to be able to be a big part of the rush. The other thing I really noticed in his game tonight is just with the puck, he's not so anxious to move it. He's very thoughtful that when he gets the puck, he knows that if he takes an extra half a second to look around at what his options are, he's going to make a better choice. And if nothing is available, it's a simple turn back. I'm going to go D to D. We'll reset and we'll try it again. I think in years past, he was just so caught in between what he was supposed to do that he'd release the puck, oftentimes not knowing where it's going, or maybe to option B, C, or D as opposed to option A. And I think now he's just taking the time to just be a guy who's just taking that one extra little bit. I guess if I had to sum it up, I'd say the game seemingly has slowed down for him a little bit after all these years. And that's a good thing. Like, he plays with bump in his game. That reach is always going to have an impact. And if he can give you a little bit of offense now, well, good on him. He's 11 points now. I think his career high is 14. 5 goals. He just keeps building on that as a career high. So, good on him for kind of figuring it out. But let's not forget, guys, I think it was game 230, 232 tonight. Like, you're talking about an NHL defenseman who comes in the league as young as he did to take 250 games before you kind of get it right. So he's right in that area.
Yeah, well, that's 1, 2, 3 guys who score on this night who haven't. Well, Logan Stanley's been scoring, but one of the things I look at this game is you've had your top guys consistently scoring over and over and over again. And how many of those games does that line get 2, 3 goals and you get nothing from anyone else? And that changes the face of the game, right? Because if you take this game here tonight and all you get is those 2 top line goals, the 2 Gabe Vilardi goals, now all of a sudden it's 1 goal for the Washington Capitals. Now a lifeless Capitals team may get some hope. Who knows what happens in that game if that's the case, but it's clear depth scoring made a real difference here tonight. And you can score a great rate with Cambrian Credit Union. Getting a mortgage doesn't have to throw you off your game. While you focus on home sweet home, our friends at Team Cambrian Credit Union take care of the mortgage part with their low rates. Whether you're looking for a new home, renewing, or making the switch, Cambrian is your mortgage MVP. They can help make the next season of your mortgage path easier and help save you money. Now, and that is what we call a win. Head to cambrian.mb.ca/rates for more. Okay, I mentioned him there quickly. Gabe Vilardi, after he scores a couple of his goals, I would say Gabe Vilardi's got the FU face down, right? After he scores his goals, there's someone out there needs to be told to F off right now. I'm going to do it with my face, right? I'm not going to celebrate and be happy and high five. It's going to be someone's getting the attitude for me scoring these goals here. And what that makes it 6 straight games with points for Gabe Vilardi. And I know he was taken off that top line in order to kind of spur offense. His response to that has been to be a very consistent scorer. I know critics of that whole thing will say only one of those points came away from Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. And that's true. There's truth to that. But Ken, given the response that we're seeing from Gabe Vilardi, and kind of even given the response that we saw from him after the last game, which was, a real gut punch game for the Jets, and his response in the post-game media availability and everything like that, where do you think his headspace is at, being pulled off that line, put back on that line, performing the entire time? Where do you see Gabe Vilardi at right now? First star of the game tonight.
Yeah, honestly, Sean, I don't see him being concerned with what line he's been on. I mean, I remember asking about him about it at one point, and he's like, "Oh, I don't have to play with." I mean, he likes playing with those guys, but he's not one of those guys. It's like, "Oh, I'm only playing with them," or I'm sulking.
You don't think though there's?
Oh, I don't think he took it personally at all. No,
off that line, no,
not at all. No,
okay.
Not to me. At least not in terms of the conversations we've had. Whether it's at a podium or whatever else. I think that this is a guy who, he appreciates the fact that he is getting top line minutes. Sean, he's not far removed from being a third line player. Basically, when he was in LA, he didn't get a lot of top 6 time at all. So even though, yes, I mean, of course you'd prefer to play on the top line if you could, because it means more minutes. I don't think Gabe, I don't think he took that personally. That's just my personal view. Sam, I mean, you've known the player longer than I have, but that's my interpretation. This is a guy who loves to score goals. And again, people can say whatever they want about who's driving and whatever else and who's a complimentary player. I mean, Gabe Vilardi's tied with Mark Scheifele for the team lead. He's got 16 snips after 32 games. So he's doing an exceptional job. He was on pace for 35 plus last year before the injury came. This is a guy that has the potential to be 35 to 40 again, no matter what line he's on. But this is a guy who loves to score. He loves to distribute on the power play, and he's done an excellent job on that line, which is why he was back with them in this game today.
But there's nothing wrong with that. If you have to maximize a guy by playing him with 2 others, then that's what you got to do. You know what I mean? So what good is it to try and spread the scoring around if the scoring comes at a lesser pace than when he's with his top guys? So it's a hard thing for coaches to navigate through sometimes, but ultimately at the end of the day, you have to find the spot which exacts the best out of him. And that seems to me his spot. So it's also incumbent upon others to kind of step up and provide that secondary scoring. But when you have the Lowry line going like it does, that spreads things out a little bit. Who I thought was excellent tonight was Nyquist, actually. He drove a lot of the offense tonight, even shorthanded, a couple of really good chances. So, I think he's a more of an important piece than maybe people would want to let on, because he has the ability to be a little bit of a pain in the butt. He transports the puck pretty good. He can shoot it pretty good. He's a guy that, so he's a 3rd or 4th line guy, but I think he can have an impact here. But I wanted to make that point about how good he was and getting back to, putting guys in spots where they're going to produce the most for you.
I think, Sean, don't you think? Oh, sorry. I was going to say, Sean, just quickly, this was Vlad Nemestikov's best game in a month, and I don't think it was particularly close. 4 shots on net. The save that Thompson makes on him on the cross ice 1T is one of the best saves you're going to see this year. But he needs it. It's 1 assist in 19 games now. Again, fresh eyes, Sam. What did you see from Nemestikov here? Because he's been struggling offensively, especially.
Yeah, a little bit more straight line tonight, I thought. Then, he's usually kind of one of those dodgers and weavers, and there was a little bit of that in his game tonight, but I thought a little bit more straight line where he was getting pucks in and then using what is pretty good speed for him to get in there and get on those pucks in the O-zone. But he's still like, he does a lot of things really well. And when he's at his best is plugging in holes where you need him. And when you're a healthy lineup like the Jets were for the first time all season tonight, you can plug him into a spot that, all right, we can put him on the wing, we can put him at center, we can put him with a number of different guys. We know he's going to give us an honest two-way game. So I think he's more, like he's an important piece to the entire puzzle for sure. But I liked his game a lot tonight.
I think he's just one of the guys tonight that got on a whole roster of guys got their pristine roofing wake-up call. And we're going to give the credit, put it square at the pads of Connor Hellebuyck on this night, who helped give the Winnipeg Jets the pristine roofing wake-up call. And that means it's time to give North End Rick the pristine roofing wake-up call, 204-981-6289, the guy you want down at your house for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. Give your home the Pristine Roofing and Siding wake-up call. You will be glad that you did. And Ken, why don't you give Sweet Lou a shout-out while you're at it?
Right on. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Fernlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@loufurlan.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Furlan, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent support of the community, including this podcast.
I just wanted to back up Sammy just a little bit here and say I think he absolutely nailed it with the Gabe Vilardi thing. Like what I've seen from Gabe Vilardi is a player that has been a driver when he's moved around, but there's been an element of like other guys need to pick up their game as well, which is what Sam's talking about. But you can see there's a level that he reaches when he's on the line with those two other players. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have great chemistry and not be a line that gets split up and fractured into a bunch of different places and works like that. The Winnipeg Jets have something that works. And let's be honest, the consistency at which we're watching Mark Scheifele, Gabe Vilardi, and Kyle Connor score right now is enough to keep teams in games for a lot of teams. If you add goaltending to that, now there's a piece that comes back that gets you that much close to putting you over the top in games. And it just has to be incumbent on somebody at some point on the other 9 forwards or defensemen or whatever, finding a way to get some offense here or there. Like I said, you get a couple from a line like that tonight. That's the difference out there. The rest of the Winnipeg Jets team needs to continue on the pristine roofing wake-up call and make sure that the second line, the third line, or the fourth line consistently, not every single line consistently, but one of those lines needs to be carrying and picking up the load that the top line is carrying night in and night out to make that happen. But putting Gabe Vilardi back on that line, you can see a line that clearly works and works extremely well. Let's go, because Sammy's here, to kind of a little bit of a bigger conversation. We know that there was Team Canada scouting in the building tonight. So Scheifele and Tom Wilson, 2 players. Logan Thompson, I guess you could throw into that group. 2 players who were not on the Four Nations roster, trying to get on that roster. I don't think it was Tom Wilson's best showing on this night, and Mark Scheifele has quite often been the best player on the ice for the Winnipeg Jets this year. I didn't think he was this year, even though he was successful. I thought it was a little bit of a quiet night for him. Sammy, I'd like you to weigh in on your thoughts on those positions. Who do you think the first guys up to go are? If you think that there's obvious guys or maybe likely candidates to be coming off the Four Nations roster and not making the Olympic roster.
Yeah, it's going to be really fascinating. I mean, Celebrini wasn't there. I think he's a lock now. Bedard's injury is going to have probably some say in it, and that even if he wasn't on the team, surely he was in consideration. And so that knocks one maybe competitor off the list, depending on what kind of news we get back on him here tomorrow. But it's funny because everyone wants to add, but you have to go back to a team that won the Four Nations and say, what are you going to subtract? Is it Travis Konechny? Is it Sam Bennett? Who are those people going to be that you're going to delete in order to add? So that's a fascinating element to me. Like, for sure, Wilson was very quiet tonight. He wasn't really throwing the body around. He didn't have a ton of grade A chances. Took a penalty there, but it's nowhere near the best I've seen Tom Wilson play. So when it comes to Scheifele, pretty much played to his identity today. Maybe not. I haven't looked at the face-offs, but from my memory, probably not quite as good in the circle as what we have come to know from Mark. But
just under 50%.
Yeah, getting chances, doing the things that he's supposed to do and driving the offense, and he did that for the most part in this game. I just don't know. Like, what do you do? And really, when it comes to this group of guys that we're talking about, Celebrini and Wilson and Bedard,
Suzuki,
like, when it comes to this group of guys, the coaching staff obviously has kind of how it's going to set its lineup. But these guys, for me, they're not going to walk in and be top six guys. So how is it that they're going to fit in your bottom six? Does Scheifele fit there as a winger, as a center, as a right shot guy, as a scoring guy? Can he match up well enough? So these are the questions you have to ask yourself. Celebrini, for me, he can go give you 6 minutes right now and be entirely effective as a guy who's going to hold his own defensively and maybe even give you a little bit of an offensive push. Bennett, can you bring both Bennett and Wilson? Is that the style of game you want to play? I don't know. It was so ridiculously fast at the Four Nations. Like, I don't know if you can bring both of those guys. Mind you, Wilson can play to that speed. So, is the physicality going to be part of it? Is he going to be a guy who you're worried about going off the deep end a little bit when it comes to, to playing within the confines, especially in the international rules? So there's so much still to be answered. I would love to just be a fly, on the ceiling there in that room when those discussions are being had. But we're talking about this group of 4 to 6 guys. Again, go back and tell me which 4 to 6 guys you're taking off for the Four Nations team to allow those 4 to 6 to come in.
Right. I mean, you get the bonus is one extra forward, but I mean, Anthony, it's easy to say Anthony Cirelli, but Coop loves him. So is he going to say, I'd rather have Nick Suzuki than Anthony Cirelli? I'm not sure.
Probably
right?
Not, yeah.
I mean, Konechny is definitely in tough, right, Sammy? I mean, to me, he's the not the easy pick, but he would be the most likely guy to be in trouble. I mean, Seth Jarvis is having a great year. I don't see a scenario where he's not there. Sam Bennett was a guy we thought might be in danger. Now he's one of the hottest scorers in the NHL over the last 10 or 15 games. So, and when you look at what he's done in the last Stanley Cup playoffs, two, you're not leaving that guy at home. I don't think so. And then on the back end, I mean, Josh isn't a lock. I mean, he's got to be on the second pairing. But I mean, what about a guy like Chychrun, Sam? We saw him today. He's one of the highest goal scorers on the back end. He's a mobile guy, big, strong guy.
Creating offense all over the place. Like, 12 goals and leading all the D in the league in that department is really impressive. So, but again, the back end is looking pretty good. Some of it's going to depend on Drew Doughty. Is he going to be healthy enough to play? And even if he is healthy enough to play, is he going to be a guy that they want to take after how he had performed at Four Nations? So there's lots of decisions here still to be made. But I do think we've seen a number of guys in that game tonight that have a good chance of doing something special for their countries.
Just to touch on some of the things you guys are talking about, Bennett is a guy that I saw who had a massive impact at the Four Nations, right? He's done it at that level. Yeah. He did it when things became, the moment became heaviest. And that's who Sam Bennett is. He's a guy that when the moment becomes the heaviest, he is the most likely or one of the most likely guys to perform. That's why he's there. I don't see him going anywhere. I agree with you on Konechny, Ken. I agree with you, Sammy, that the thing about all this, and we can say whatever we want, and if there's someone coming off or going onto that roster that wasn't at it before, I think the top of the list starts with Celebrini. Because you nailed it earlier today, Sam. He's the second coming of Sidney Crosby, right? He gives you that effort level. If you needed any kind of example of it tonight, and if Don Sweeney was doing his scouting here, and he went up and he looked on the TV and saw the San Jose Sharks down 5 goals and coming back and winning 6-5 in the third period, and the 3 last goals that were scored in that game, Macklin Celebrini has an effect on that. Like, Macklin Celebrini's points are too high. He's too good. He's too young. There's too many things. Yeah. He has everything going for him that you would want in a player in that situation. So he's tough to get off that list if someone is going to go on there. I don't know how much more turning there is going to be done. I do wonder the idea of Tom Wilson doing as good as he's done, and the fact that Tom Wilson has made it happen this year with Justin Sourdif being his center quite often, a guy who doesn't have a lot of points. He's a rookie. Pierre-Luc Dubois isn't playing there anymore. Tom Wilson has become that guy. We're talking about, Gabe Vilardi being a driver, right? And yet, it's still, as he's been driving and doing good things, it's still, he seems to score when he gets back on a line with Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. That's not a question when it comes to Tom Wilson and his size and the way that he plays, and he's able to bring you in the disruption he can take to the front of the net. That's not a question. I take a look, and I think that those 2 players are first in line. I don't know if I've talked about this. I know I talked about it with Sammy earlier today. I think I've talked about it with Ken. One of the stories that we didn't get to share, we may share it live on Wednesday when Sammy and I will be doing the Blues game. But we went and we were doing some stats, and what we found was we don't believe, it's a hard stat to nail down, but we don't believe there's any 2 forwards in the NHL who have played more minutes together with each other since 2016-17 than Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. Like, these guys are on the ice all the time together, right? The closest that we found was Kucherov and Braden Point, and they're still a significant amount behind those 2 players. This is one thing that I wonder if it will work. And Ken, you can weigh in on this afterwards, because I don't think I've had this conversation with you, but this is one thing that I think has the potential to work against Mark Scheifele. And if you think about it from this perspective, Kyle Connor went to play with the U.S. He didn't necessarily have the tournament that a lot of people would have expected him to the degree that he gets kept out of the lineup in his last game. And I wonder how many people would look at that situation maybe and the Mark Scheifele situation. And when I talk about a guy like, let's even say Wyatt Johnston, who before this game was 1 point back of Mark Scheifele. Wyatt Johnston's a guy who plays with a whole bunch of different players all the time in that lineup. Mark Scheifele typically plays with the same guys over and over and over again. And one guy he's played with more consistently than any other player in the league, which leaves a question if you're a scout for Team Canada. What does Mark Scheifele look like if he's not playing with Kyle Connor? Yes, we know Kyle Connor and him have chemistry. They have insane chemistry, and they've earned that chemistry with basically 8-9 straight years of playing together. What I need to know is, in a short tournament, when I'm grabbing a guy and I'm throwing him on a line with 2 different players that he's never played with before, how quickly is that guy going to find chemistry with the new players? And that's where Tom Wilson, Wyatt Johnston, guys like that have an edge on Mark Scheifele, because they've been around their lineup playing with different guys, making it work with different guys. And what we see over and over again from Mark Scheifele is he makes it work. He makes it sing with the same guys over and over again. But I can't answer the question that you can put Mark Scheifele with 2 other Winnipeg Jet players and he's going to go off, because we don't get the opportunity to see that. And because we don't, neither do the scouts at Team Canada.
Just quickly tying a bow on it, Sammy, I see Celebrini as 2010 Jonathan Toews. He may start in a position where he's the 12th forward, but by the end of it, he may be the best player. He could be the best player in the tournament. Now, again, less likely that with McDavid and McKinnon there that's going to be the case, but just in terms of somebody whose role could be enhanced quickly. Sean, in relation to your question, I mean, I would counter by saying Mark looked a lot different with Blake Wheeler than he looks with Gabe Vilardi. So yes, of course, the left winger is the same, but I also think Mark's biggest benefit on the flip side would be his body positioning, puck control, ability to hang on to pucks.
Totally agree.
You put him with a guy that can finish. I think he could be great with other people. And I would even draw back to Canada Cups. I mean, not a lot of people would have expected Dale Howardchuk to be tossed over the boards for a defensive zone faceoff in 1987 with Mario Lemieux and Gretzky. So I would think that he is adaptable. I think John Cooper has had him at World Championships where he's played with other people and played, extremely well. Mark also has the Team Canada experience at the World Junior level. So, I mean, it's a fair comment for sure. I just think that his game, his ability to skate, and again, we always talk about Kyle Connor's skating ability. Mark Scheifele is an exceptional skater. It just he isn't always airing it out in open space, so you don't see his skating ability, but you would see it in a scenario like that with Sam. You mentioned the speed at Four Nations. It's probably going to be even faster at the Olympics. So I think that's a big advantage for Scheifele. But again, who are you playing him with? What role do you envision? Those are two big questions to be answered when it comes to that.
Just one quick one here, Sammy. The fact that rink is going to be smaller, does that change at all the type of player that you need to have in an even smaller rink?
Some people are going to say, oh yeah, physical, that's a physical part, so we'll get that guy. Others say that it's your decision making, right? Taking away those 3 feet. And yeah, it doesn't impact the ozone, but in order to get to the ozone, you got to get through the neutral zone. And that's where some of that really quick thinking and decision making is going to have to really come to the fore.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We should get to some awards here, Ken. But first, it's been called for, and it's been called for my main man, Terwilliger. If I could find this here, how deep did this? It's been piled up. I don't know. Terwilliger called for the headband, so we're going to make this a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. Let's get at it. It was Terwilliger earlier on, but it was also Paul Robert who says celebration headband. So here it is, folks. Come off talking about Celebrini to the celebration headband. Hey, you'll celebrate if you head on down to Myers Drugs, because they're going to take care of all your pharmaceutical needs, all your supplemental needs, and all your health food needs. And of course, you don't need to do much to take part. All you got to do is give them a call, because Myers Drugs operates and delivers anywhere in the city. So give them a call and let them impress you as they have impressed Ken and I from the beginning. Okay, let's start out with the Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game. Ken, I want you to start on that.
Yeah, a couple interesting ones on the defensive side of things. Sandberg on Ethan Frank is the one that I have marked here. Really good job by him on the back check, and he's really started to round into form. There were some, uncharacteristic fumbles, stumbles, whatever word you want to use. Sandberg's starting to look like a guy who's, getting himself back up to full speed after missing time. To me, he was out there killing plays and, being himself. And Sam, you talked about the need for the penalty kill to be better. I thought Dylan Sandberg was out there using the hockey IQ, intelligence. His ability to clear pucks was evident all throughout, sort of one step ahead of the next play. And that's why I'm choosing him on the We've Got You Covered play today.
Sammy, anything stand out to you?
Nyquist. Awesome. I thought he was great today.
He was. Yeah, you know what? I had it written down. I wanted to talk about it. Yeah.
So, we've got you covered, a little bit on the PK, a little bit 5-on-5, creating some chances. Like, he's not coming in to be a 50-point guy, but he is a guy that can definitely have an impact on the game in those areas. And, he was getting under people's skins. He's turning around and making opportunities, like entering the zone, stopping, finding options. PK enters the zone with tons of speed, sends it all the way back, kills some time. Like, I loved his game, and that's playing to his identity. So, you look at, not being in the lineup for all the games, and, as a guy who's inability to score through 21 games, doesn't have a goal, I would take that game on most nights at a Nyquist and not worry so much about him putting up 50 points or scoring. I mean, you have to have some of that, but I'd take that game all night for him. So he's got me covered on that one.
Yeah, and no doubt what a move he made down in the corner to make that spin and go to the front of the net and almost roofed it. That would have been hey, there's been frustration, and there's been frustration that's been earned for the fans when it comes to Gus Nyquist, but that would have been a heck of an opener for him, even if it's coming as late as it is in the season. I would just give the Johnson Group Got You Covered plays of the game to the depth scoring that happens. I think that's important in this. It'll be a little bit lost in the hoopla that is surrounded by Connor Hellebuyck. But if you can get second line, third line, fourth line making contributions like that from night to night, you're going to put the Winnipeg Jets in a lot better spot to win, because the top line just cannot be held off the score sheet at this stage the way that they're going. Anyways, that's our Johnson Group Got You Covered plays of the game. And hey, do you run small businesses in Canada? If you do, or just one small business, you just need to look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And that brings us to our hashtag the keg save of the game. And Ken, I actually think this is going to be an interesting one, because you touched on one which was probably the save of the game early on before this. People are not going to want to go away from Connor Hellebuyck, but if we're being honest, there was probably not a lot of 10 alarm bell saves by Connor Hellebuyck on this night. But boy, oh boy, how do you not give it to the guy who helped elicit a performance like that from the Winnipeg Jets?
Yeah, the best save made in the game was Logan Thompson on Vladislav Nemestikov, full stop. But I think this is a full body of work and a calming, the Hellebuyck effect, the calming effect. I do think there were a couple good saves before the power play goal was scored on the 2-man advantage, but they weren't 10 bellers. And Sean, to be quite frank, I don't think they were the extraordinary save that Hellebuyck made look easy. I just thought that he was very, efficient in the game. So if we're doing a keg save, it has to be a, body of work scenario, whereas the best save in the game is made by Thompson.
He saved them with his mind, is what you're talking about.
Well, there's a Jedi mind trick. There's a little bit of, somebody in the chat mentioned Hellebuyck equals Wolverine. Like,
yeah,
there is an element of Wolverine in Hellebuyck coming back at least a week early, and then Hellebuyck in his dramatic fashion after the game saying, no, day one, I'm going to be back in 3 weeks. Like,
yeah,
they're just that calming effect. I mean, and Hellebuyck had a great answer. So he was asked about, what it was like to sort of have that impact. And he's like, well, I can't really dig deep into this because I feel like I'm just going out there and doing my job. So, I'm just going to give it body of work to Hellebuyck. He got him in the mind, as Reg Dunlop would say, basically.
Yeah, there you go. There, or Sean Reynolds. Just
what was this with the shroud of secrecy though? Like, stop.
Yeah. I touched on it a bit, Sammy, at the beginning there. Usually the broadcast is what'll happen quite often, because and the understanding is there. The broadcast needs to prepare for certain things, and you'll never see myself or Harn Ryan or Sam or anyone who's on these broadcasts tweet out something that was told in confidentiality to us, or else that kind of stuff wouldn't happen. It was a little bit strange that we weren't given the heads up on that in that situation. I personally don't think it was necessary. I don't know what the Winnipeg Jets gained by that, because
that's what I don't get. I would love someone to answer that question for me. Like, what was this? Like, why? We saw him in the morning. He was out there with the guys who were scratched, so he was clearly doing some stuff, and he's practicing. We talked about it. Like, surely you didn't just decide at 6:58 that he was going to start. Or
well, no, and Ken was all over this. Ken had been leading his audience, rightfully so, to the conclusion that Connor Hellebuyck was probably returning on this day. I think we all kind of knew it, expected it. We were preparing for it. I mean, maybe there's not a trust factor there with Scott Arniel and the media in general. Maybe he thinks that we'd go and we'd leak it to the opposition team or something like that. It seems.
But here's the thing. So what? So what if the Washington Capitals know? If they know at 12 or 3 or 6, like they're a professional NHL team that's sitting amongst the top teams in the division. Do they really care who they're shooting pucks against? They have to score. Like, it doesn't matter. You could put the shooter tutor in there. Like, I don't know. Maybe there's someone out there that thinks that's wow, that was great gamesmanship. I don't see it. I think those days are over.
And I think you actually gain more by, especially a guy like Hellebuyck. You want them to know he's coming because there could be, intimidation factor is too strong, but I think you should want them to know that your best is going to be out there.
Yeah. I'll tell you this.
Weird.
Spencer Carberry is not getting caught off guard by like, oh my God, they put Hellebuyck in. What are we going to do? We never.
And that's just it. Of course. And this is the point I'm trying to make. Like, okay, so it's a little bit sour grapes for the broadcast. Like, whatever. I'm fully prepared for it as well. But it's just nice to know to tighten up your notes, and maybe you're adding an additional couple things, and you're thinking about, okay, maybe we're going to roll in a pack of his last start, or we're going to be able to complement the broadcast better. I understand not everything that needs to be done for the broadcast, but nobody was tricking anybody by announcing it as late as they did. That's I guess the point I'm getting at.
All right, let's have the Renny Devil's Advocate pop in here and counter that point. If we believe, and there's a clear belief by a lot of the people in the media, the Winnipeg Jets themselves, the fan base, no doubt, national media, it is entirely like that. If there's a belief that the Winnipeg Jets, who've looked very mistake prone the last number of games, not lifeless for a lot of time this season, and then come out this game and look the way they look, and they look that way. Why do we explain it? Well, it's the confidence factor. It's immeasurable, but man, oh man, Connor Hellebuyck got in net and the Winnipeg Jets turned things around right away. If we believe in things like that are immeasurable and have no, other than just this happened, that happened. It's like the Simpsons episode of specious reasoning where Lisa picks up the rock and says, I have this rock for bears. And he's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, you don't see any bears around. And Homer says, Lisa, I'd like to buy your rock, because he's totally sold on it. If we believe like that, then maybe, just maybe, the mind games that were played today by Scott Arniel had an effect on the Washington Capitals, who you, Sammy, and myself very much believe played a horrible game tonight, like one of the worst games they've had this year. So, hey, if we believe that the Winnipeg Jets somehow magically, with confidence, solved all their woes by putting Connor Hellebuyck in net, even if he didn't have to be great on this night to do it, then maybe we should believe in Santa Claus and that Scott Arniel mind the Washington Capitals on this night by keeping that starter close to the vest. Anyways, we'll just have to ponder that in life and move on. Guys, anything to say before we have to hand out our hashtag the Keg Save of the Game winner, because that's mine, Ken's, and Sammy's hashtag the Keg Save of the Game. But it doesn't matter what we think. It matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the Keg Save of the Game winner. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine Keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And our winner from our last show, that would be Mr. Ajax 711. Mr. Ajax 711. You know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I'll have the fine folks at the Keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine Keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. Ken, anything to say before we go? Sammy?
We should just touch on this quickly. Tishu, last Ovi game in Winnipeg, potentially. Pretty quiet game for the grade 8.
Yes.
Unfortunate, but he has lit up the Jets over the years, whether they were the Jets or the Thrashers. 58 career goals against them. and he scored some monumental milestones against them too, Sean.
600 past
Yeah.
Gordie Howe for number 2 all time. Yeah, we did a story on it tonight in the broadcast, and I don't know, someone, who was it, Sammy, or is it you you think he's going to go for 1,000?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so much is going to depend on what he ends up with this year, right?
Sure.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, what did he have? 10 goals in his last 18 games?
10 and 13.
10 and 13. Like,
yeah.
What is happening? You know what was a fun conversation was with Spencer Carberry before the game. Sammy, is that the first time you've had a coaches meeting with him?
First time, yeah. But I know him a little bit from the past.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
So I never got to tell this story, but at the beginning of the year, and I knew this happening last year, and a lot of you were along for the ride with me when I was doing the coverage of Ovi trying to break Gretzky's record. And one of the things that I would say is they were very much, and it was pretty obvious, they were open about it, they were coaching that team to break the record. Like, they were succeeding at the same time. They were doing both, but they were also doing a lot of things that you wouldn't normally see teams do because they were just trying to get Ovi the record. Once the record fell, I was talking to Spencer Carberry earlier this year for a game back in October against the Ottawa Senators. The Jets will play on Monday. And I'd said, like, does breaking that a record and putting it in the rearview mirror allow you to change the way that you deploy Ovi? And he said entirely. And I've talked to him this year, and we're going to be using you in different situations, and other guys are going to be used more prominently in this and that. Basically, your opportunities are starting to shrink here. Yeah. And then we see him a couple months later, and Ovechkin is just going off. And I basically said to him in the coaches meeting, like, what's going on here? You said that everything was going to be like winding down for him, and they're just speeding up. And you can just see, even for the coach who did a great job explaining to us, Sam, of how he coaches and does things to open up and provide opportunities for Ovechkin, that even with that, he's blown away at how often he's able to take advantage of his opportunities. Fun conversation about a legend, a living legend in the game right now, and a really, really, really smart coach who's unbelievable at kind of conveying the behind the scenes stuff. So with the media. Yeah,
really cool.
Then just wrapping up, boys, you should stick tap for Nino Niederreiter in the ceremony. Awesome stuff. And Sammy, I mean, you go back with him to those Portland days, right? You would have watched him in those Portland days when he was coached by Mike Johnson and Travis Green. One of the most, he's the TV commercial. He's the most interesting man in the world. He's into wine. He's, flying on the side of planes. He is hanging out. What are you up to this weekend? Oh, just going over to play 18 with Roger Federer.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, such an interesting guy, Sam. I mean, what stood out about the ceremony, and also Nino, the person and the career that he's had, getting to 1,000 in games here.
Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, 5th overall pick, right? So when you look at the point production, I think it's about a half point per game, slightly less than that. And so, is that commensurate with a 5th overall pick? And then the flip side of that is you picked a guy 5th overall who's now one of 418 people that have ever played the game to play 1,000 games. So it tells me a lot about, honest guy, hard worker, giving you effort, really good teammate. I mean, for the superstars to go and play that many games and put up points, someone's always going to find a place. But for that type of guy, you have to do the small things well. You have to be a guy who's good in the room. You have to understand that you're not going to be playing 30 minutes a night, but you're going to be playing probably in that 13 to 15-minute range. So I have a lot of time for that, and definitely think his game totals, his longevity is very much in line with where he was picked at 5th overall by the Islanders back in, was it 09 or 10?
2010,
Yeah.
Well done. Okay, that's it for us. Well done to you, boys, and Sammy. Always a pleasure to have you in this space here. And if all you folks out there appreciate the conversation that just happened in this space and that continue to happen in this space, we implore you to appreciate the contributions of our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Jim Pattison Toyota on Region, Vittorio Rossi, Cambrian Credit Union, Pristine Roofing, Sweet Lou Furlan, Flame and Comfort, Myers Drugs, of course, the Kenny and Renny OGs in the Johnson Group, and the Keg Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. We will do this again after Monday's game. Big tilt coming up to see if the Winnipeg Jets can get some consistency. They seem to be getting the games here and there. Can they get the consistency? It's the first thing we'll talk about on Monday, right here on Kenny and Renny. Talk to you then. Bye-bye, folks.
Good night, folks.